Welcome to the Cognitive Crucible, produced by the Information Professionals Association. Our website is information-professionals.org, where you can find links and information about today's conversation and get access to members-only content. Join John Bicknell and explore all aspects of our generational challenge, cognitive security. The Cognitive Crucible is a forum that presents different perspectives and emerging thought leadership related to the information environment. The opinions expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of or endorsement by the Information Professionals Association.
My guest today on the Cognitive Crucible for his third appearance on the Cognitive Crucible is Dr. Rand Waltzman, who, as listeners no doubt know, is one of the founding board members of the Information Professionals Association. Rand Waltzman, welcome back to the Cognitive Crucible.
Well, thank you, John. It is a pleasure to be back.
And I've got a very small apology here. So Rand was the very first guest on the Cognitive Crucible, all the way back, episode number 1, and then I asked Rand to come back at episode 100, and I think every 100 episodes or so we should have Rand Waltzman on. But this is going to be episode 208. So Rand, I'm sorry we missed episode 200, but I hope you don't hold it against me.
Close enough.
Close enough. Okay, fair enough. Okay, so the conversation that I'd like to have with you today, Rand, will cover your famous Disinformation 101 series. But before we get into this topic, could we get your extemporaneous take on our strategic landscape, or if you prefer, the times in which we live?
Well, basically, I would say things are a total mess. They're really bad, and they're going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. And so that brings me to the really sort of the purpose of these slides, this Disinformation 101, is really the idea is that, nobody's coming to your rescue as an individual. The government's not going to help you. Nobody's going to help you. It's really, you have to help yourself. So these slides are to help you help yourself, defend yourself in the environment, in the current information environment.
So you're taking what sounds like in international studies a realism view of the realist view in international relations is that we're all countries are independent agents, and when it really comes down to it, every country should be looking out after itself, because in the end no one's going to be coming to your rescue. At least that's the kind of thing that I hear like John Mearsheimer talk about when he talks about the realist lens for international relations. And so you're taking that all the way down to the individual level.
Yes, I mean, I think that's absolutely true in the current global information environment. It's really every man, woman, and child for themselves, because nobody is coming to help you.
Right. But would you say that there is okay, fine, yes, let's say that is a reasonable way of looking at things, but back up to the community level or to the nation state level, if on average citizens are looking out for themselves, as you were just describing, does that redound to the benefit of the community and the nation state?
Well, hopefully. I mean, if people start being more particular about what they believe and what they hear, that will have a large scale effect.
Okay.
That's the hope.
Right.
Because whatever's going to happen has to come bottom up. It's not going to come top down. So, I mean, if you want something to happen at the community level, it has to start with the members of the community.
Right.
At least in the current situation, because I don't really see any potential force at the community level to really make things better without, I mean, individuals going along. I mean, you can, without the individuals going along with it, nothing's really going to happen. I mean, we got to where we are now in such a mess because people allowed themselves to be led around. and they have to just sort of put their foot down and say, no, that's not okay. I'm not going to allow myself to be led around. It's like remember that movie where the guy stood up and the news reporter stood up and he said, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. And he told everybody get to the window and I'm going to yell out, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. Well, that's where we are.
Yeah, that movie does sound very familiar to me. I'm not quite recalling the
Was it
name of
Network? I think it was Network.
Network. Is that what it was? Okay, all right,
I
all
think
right.
so. I
Yeah,
think so. That's
yeah,
right.
yeah. Okay, well, uh, I think you pretty much answered the question that I was going to ask is like, so, what is this Disinformation 101 series? Who is it for? I guess that's really what you answered is who is this for? And you're saying this is for individuals, but
Yep.
maybe you could give a little bit more of a scene setter on, what is this Disinformation 101 series? How long has it been around? What, what was the impetus that, what catalyzed you to create it, and so on and so forth.
Well, originally it was a course I was going to teach. And the name of the course was Defense Against the Dark Arts of Mass Manipulation Through the Use of New Media.
That just kind of rolls off the tongue.
Yes, it does. So all these slides that you see that I post one every day is actually from a complete set. So there's like they exist in 14 files. Each file represented one lecture for the course. And yeah, I mean it's predicated on the idea that you know cognitive type attacks are most effective when the victim or the target is not aware or not understanding that they're actually being attacked.
Hmm.
Okay, but the most effective way to manipulate somebody is they shouldn't know they're being manipulated, of course. So the idea is that if you understand how these attacks are done, it should hopefully help you to recognize when one is being done at you or on you. So what these slides do, what the course was about, is to help you to learn to recognize when attacks are happening and thereby making them a lot less effective.
I see. I see. And
So
it's so if I may, to our audience, for those who are unfamiliar, as Rand mentioned, he posts these slides on both LinkedIn and Twitter like daily, you said, or
yes, every day, one slide every
yeah,
day.
yeah.
Over the
So
14 lectures, there's probably over 400 slides.
okay, so it's like maybe like every year and a half, they start repeating themselves or
Yeah,
thereabouts.
yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
uh,
That's
but
about it.
but for those of you who've not are not connected with Rand on LinkedIn or are I don't know what it is on Twitter, subscribed on Twitter, you can do so and you can see these, but they're yeah, I mean, this is my interpretation, Rand, and so I don't quite do it justice, but these are really, really nifty, like one page, uh, 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 very engaging, um, discussions of these kinds of dynamics that he was just describing. And frequently there's a cartoon which comes from everything from what the New Yorker to like Far
Okay.
Side cartoons, but so, some kind of a cartoon which is related to the dynamic that's being described in the text. And they're really, really interesting, engaging ways of learning more about this problem space.
Yeah, the idea is that each slide is basically one idea. So it's really bite-sized. I mean, it's serving up in bite-sized chunks. And the important thing to understand is that the whole thing is written from the attacker's point of view, from
Mm,
the offensive point of view, because you really want to be able to put yourself in the mind or the mindset of the attacker. So this is like, if I was going to attack, here's what I would do.
mm,
So this is it's almost if you put them all together, it almost then looks like an anarchist handbook or an anarchist cookbook for the 21st century,
mm,
collectively.
mhm,
But
mhm,
so it looks like it's written for the offender, but it's actually written for the defender to try to understand how the offender thinks.
mm. It's almost kind of like C.S. Lewis, or no, that's not it. But what was the famous book? It's called like the Screw Tape Letters or the Screw Tape Diaries. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't
It's
know that.
it's it's I'll put a link to it in the show notes, but it's written from the perspective of the devil, where
Okay.
the devil is talking to one of his demons, and he's like trying to teach his demon how to go about, infecting humanity, or how to go about doing the devil's work. And it's all about, do this, don't do that, and it's done in a very clever way. So maybe it's similar-ish to that. So anyway, so
Yes, it sounds very similar. It's the same idea. I
yeah,
mean, imagine, this is a guy, this is written by somebody who's trying to teach a junior how to really, yank people's chains, really pull, push them around,
yep, yep,
how
yep.
to manipulate people.
Yep, I'm pretty sure it was C.S. Lewis. I think it was the same fellow who wrote the Narnia Chronicles.
Okay.
But he also had like a literature that was less geared towards children as well. Anyway, I could be wrong about that. I'll put a link in the show notes. But okay, Dynamite. Well, so we're going to have some links in the show notes to some of these slides that Rand is going to talk about here over the next few minutes. So, Rand, let me just turn the floor over to you, and please, take this in whatever direction you think is productive.
Okay. Well, so what I thought I would do is just to go through a sampling of some of the slides just to see what they're like
Yeah.
and to get the general feel for it. So I have selected a few slides out of three different lectures. And now it's a very broad range of situations that these slides cover. So like, for example, you have one lecture, or and each lecture translates into a series of slides. So each one lecture on, for example, political campaigning, another one about advertising, another one about rumors.
Mhm.
So, for example, in a slide about rumors, which I'm going to give you a few examples, it tells you, well, how to construct a rumor, what makes a good rumor, how do you get a rumor out, how do you spread it, so it's real sort of concrete how-to stuff, Now there are a few games out there right now, which are very simple and try to teach people, how to recognize some of these things, but they do it in very, very, very sort of vague general terms but and they're very short. Now these slides, the whole set 400 covers a broad range of stuff and quite some detail. So it's really how to do these things at a pretty detailed level.
Mhm.
And the first slide I want to show you, so there's one lecture on sort of general methods and general approaches. And the first slide I want to show you from there, it gives you the difference between cognitive and technical cyber hacking. So
Mhm.
basically the concept, what it's describing here is, and you can see the slide if you get a link to it.
Yep, we'll
Um,
get a link to it. Yep.
yeah, yeah. So, and what it says, the second bullet here is that, traditional cyber attacks operate solely within the computer and network infrastructure. In cognitive attacks, what this is really all about, cognitive attacks, as it says, use a computer system to influence targets' perceptions and behavior through dis and misinformation and other informational devices, including bogus narratives, misleading statements, statements out of context, half-truths, etc. And neither hardware nor software is necessarily corrupted. This is a really important point to emphasize. Okay. So that means that you don't need unauthorized access to a target's computer system or data, which you do in a cyber hacking system. Okay. In this case, you don't need access to anything. It's just that you put in stuff out there and people will tune into it and listen to it somehow. Okay. So
Hmm.
that's a really important thing. And the other thing, of course, is with cyber hacking, there are tools available to try to detect when you're under attack. But with this kind of attack, there are currently actually no really good tools out there to detect when you're being under attack.
Mm.
It's all done by hand by somebody looking at it and saying, "Oh my God, this is, somebody's trying to get to you."
Mm.
So there's no technical means to solve this problem at the moment. People have
Mm.
done a lot of studies, a lot of research. The problem is that most of the people who are looking at this kind of problems, what they're really doing is what it comes down to is they're admiring the problem. So they're saying,
Mm.
here's an attack that's happening, or the Russians have done this, the Chinese have done this, white supremacists have done this. They're just reporting on. It really comes down to identifying and reporting and exposing these things. But that's not the same as really understanding exactly how these attacks work. And
I see.
that's what these slides are really about. I'm not interested in exposing anybody. I don't care. There's plenty of people who do that. These slides are really about the technical details of how it works. So they're completely nonpartisan in the sense that they're not pushing any point of view at all. They don't care. It's like they're like completely mercenary. In other words, you could use these to push any kind of story, any agenda, whatever you want. It doesn't matter. It's quite independent. It all works the same way.
Okay.
So
I'm going to just ask some like um, uh, almost like devil's advocate questions. Like, some people might be thinking along these lines, and so I'm just curious how you. So, how do you contrast what you're just describing here with the cognitive technical cyber hacking with um, like disinformation and misinformation? Because I believe some people would say that detecting mis or disinformation is possible, but you are making the assertion that what you're describing here, there's no detection technology that exists currently.
I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm saying it doesn't exist at the moment.
Ah,
It People haven't solved this problem.
I see. I see. So,
So
yeah.
yeah, I mean, not really, not in any automated way. It's all at best, not even semi, but maybe partially automated to pick stuff up. But in the end, somebody has to look at it and determine this by themselves.
Ah,
A
I
human has
see.
to look at it.
I
But
see.
there aren't any really good, no well-established. I mean, there's experimental techniques. People have tried to do things, but there hasn't been anything which I would consider to be reliable and really acceptable.
I see. Okay. Okay. I got you.
So,
I
so
got you.
that's just not out there yet. Yet,
Right. Right.
of
And
course.
you've got two different cartoons on this particular slide. Could you describe the cartoons and how they relate to the problem?
Well, let's see. One of them says the caption reads, "Well, what I lack in cognitive thinking skills, I more than make up in moral flexibility."
Mm,
So, yeah,
right.
I don't know exactly how to describe how that's related. It's yeah, the idea is that people who are doing these kind of attacks, they're any kind of moral considerations are really sort of thrown out the window.
Mm,
I mean, that's really what's
for
happening.
sure. For sure
There's
on that.
no, yeah, there's no morality involved in any of this. This is all, it's whatever works.
Right.
It's like there was a guy, Harry Frankfurt, who was a professor at Princeton of philosophy. He wrote a little tract paper called On Bullshit. This is from Princeton University.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard of the book.
Yes, and it's only 20 some odd pages, and it's a short little thing. And what's really great about it is that Frankfurt distinguishes between a liar and a bullshitter. A liar is somebody who will tell you something false on purpose. They know it's false, they're telling it to you for a reason. A bullshitter, on the other hand, doesn't care at all whether what they're saying is true, false, or in between. It's
Mm,
irrelevant. The only thing that's really relevant is, does it get the job done? Does it get the target to do what it wants them to do? Does it have the desired effect?
mm.
So what a bullshitter tells you could be true, could be false, could be a mix. They don't care.
Ah,
The only thing they care about is, does it achieve the effect?
yeah. Yeah.
So in that sense, there's absolutely no morals behind it whatsoever. It's not a bad moral or good moral. It's no moral. It's the only moral is, okay, am I manipulating this person to where I want him to be? That's
Right.
the only question.
Right. And the
Just-
desired effect could be everything from merely just spreading confusion and discord and you know
Or buying a box of cereal. Could be
oh,
anything.
okay, that's
Right.
right.
It could be spreading confusion and discord. It could be
Mm,
voting for some candidate. It could be buying a box of cereal. Doesn't matter.
gotcha.
Because
Gotcha.
at the end of the day, it's the same underlying techniques apply.
Hmm.
And all of these 400 slides worth of techniques, they all work because they're attacking fundamental things about people. I mean, everybody has the same basic underlying structure.
Hmm.
And these techniques are all designed to attack and exploit this underlying structure to exploit. You can call them features, you can call them bugs, you can call them whatever you want, but it's how we're built
Right.
as people.
Right. Right.
I mean,
Um,
even the guys, people who study these things for a living. I remember this one MIT professor. He was a professor at MIT at the time, who was studying these kinds of tricks. He said, I study this for a living. I'm a well-known guy, and even I get taken in by them
hmm
just
hmm
because that's how he's built. That's how we're all built.
Yep. Yep.
So you have to fight really hard to try to not be taken in.
Right. And we'll put links, Rand, to your previous two episodes on the podcast, but in your second one specifically, the the general topic of the second one was the metaverse,
Yeah.
episode 100. And but I remember you very clearly talking about these new technologies which are coming out of the lab right now, are making it harder and harder and harder for people to detect what is like AI information and um, what is not. And so even if people, on average, you can still detect if something is fabricated, um, that's not going to last forever. And before too long, we will not be able to tell at all whether something is fabricated or not.
Well, so these kind of environments, these immersive environments, they're really ideal, which has been clearly demonstrated for emotionally manipulating people. And at the basis of all manipulation is emotional manipulation.
Mm,
So these environments are they're ideal, and they're going to basically take the whole art of manipulating people to a whole different level than where we are now. And we can't even deal with the level where we are now. This is going to get a lot worse.
right,
And
right,
we're not looking. Nobody's paying attention. I mean, a few people worry about these things, but too few, too little, and it's going to be too late by the time we realize what a mess it is. It's any opportunity window that we had had closed long before anybody
right,
will at a large scale will be paying attention.
right.
So
Um, do you think maybe unless you have more to say on this particular uh,
no,
slide, shall we move on?
no, I'm ready to go to the next slide.
Okay.
So I wanted to give some examples. Um, I'm just trying to find. No, well, you'll just have to. Oh, here, yeah. So I wanted to just give an example of some kind of attack. So this lecture that these are coming from, the series is about general methods. So it's sort of a general methods lecture.
Okay.
So many of you may know what a denial of service attack is, where basically you overload a server by request and you sort of bring it to its knees, right? So that's a technical trick. But there's also something you could do called a cognitive denial of service attack. And a cognitive denial of service attack, this slide shows you one example. So, for example, if you wanted to effectively shut down a website that you didn't like, okay, one of the ways you could do it is by creating a whole bunch of fake accounts who will then post, paradoxical messages to this to this page for the purpose of creating chaos and confusion on the page, and then using additional fake accounts to offer further irrational misinterpretations of the messages using follow-on posts. So this creates misunderstanding and arguments and a lot of chaos on the site. And eventually, most of the users, the serious users, will get fed up and leave. So effectively, you shut the site down. And you do it without actually having to get to the internals of the site. That's what I mean by a cognitive denial of service attack.
Mm,
Okay. And it's a really nice technique. It works quite well. And it is way below the radar of any technical means of detecting denial of service attacks, because the traffic doesn't have to be, it's not large enough where it's, massive amounts to overwhelm the server. This kind of attacks will not overwhelm the server. The server won't be paying any attention to it at all. It just looks like normal conversation. So
right.
That's an example of a technique.
Right.
Okay.
And so it looks like normal conversation, but
Yeah, but it's not.
it's designed to like turn off what would otherwise be consumers of
Yes.
that channel.
Yes.
Hmm.
By the way, I think it's interesting to point out that that particular technique, posting irrational messages and having come back and making irrational comments and creating chaos, I actually saw that once. Somebody had leaked a document from the Chinese. This is some years ago. There was a document about instructions to, what's called internet commentators or 50 Cent Party guys. Internet commentators in China, their job is to go around and police the net and disrupt things and so on. And there was a document that was instructions to these internet commentators about different techniques they could use. And this was actually one of the techniques on that page, which I thought was kind of funny.
Oh, is
So
that right? Okay,
yeah,
so there's
so that was real advice to real live Chinese internet commentators
okay,
from
so so
from the management.
so there is some credible evidence that this isn't
Wow.
just coming out of your, creative thinking.
No, no, no,
This is
no.
stuff that is
Yeah,
live and in play.
absolutely. And here's another example, just for fun.
Okay.
Um, so there was a case, and this was also a real case that happened in the Russian elections in 2011. There was going to be a demonstration put on in Triumphal Square in Moscow, by the opposition, and they were coordinating over social media as to instructions where to, for people to go for the demonstration. So one of the pro-Kremlin activists discovered this, and the people were communicating with each other over the social network using a hashtag. It was hashtag Triumphal. So if you look for messages like that, those messages had the instructions of where to go if you did a search on that hashtag. So what the opposition did was they started flooding that hashtag with all kinds of just random junk
Mm,
and misinformation, junk, misinformation, whatever, and enough so that it became impossible. I mean, they were cranking them out at a rate of like 10 messages per second. And in the end, the hashtag was so polluted that nobody could get anything out of it useful. They
mm,
just had to wade through too much garbage. So they effectively shut the whole instruction business down through the hashtags.
hmm
And
hmm
again, much below any kind of level of detecting a standard denial of service attack. But at a cognitive level, it was a sufficient level to really shut things down.
mm.
So because that's a much lower level, you don't need, a gazillion messages per second to shut down a machine. If you got 10 messages per second to a human, yeah, there's more than enough to shut somebody's brains down and
Yeah.
not be able to get anything. So again, this is not made up. This was a real event that actually happened in
Yeah.
2011.
Okay. Wow.
So
Excellent.
so what here? Here was another one, another fun example. Um, yeah. So one of the things that you can do is it's really, if you're after a specific target audience, you can really exploit their beliefs in different ways. So here was a case where somebody decided, and this was an actual event that happened. Um, this was something that happened in July 2020, and somebody put up a fake website that said "Left Behind USA." All right. And the ad said, peaceful flag burning to resist police, sponsored by Antifa. Okay. So the target audience were the Antifa type supporters. Okay. And it was supposed to happen on the 4th of July, 2020, from between 15 and 1800 Eastern Daylight Time in Gettysburg, Virginia. Okay. So they put up uh, this fake ad, this fake Facebook page, and it was picked up and amplified by a whole variety of sort of right-wing social media and radio people. Okay, and what the ones who picked it up, they encouraged people to show up to defend the flag, right, to stop this flag burning that these really bad guys were going to do. So they tried to get them to show up, and what happened was before the flag burning was supposed to start, hundreds of people, and a lot of them heavily armed, showed up and they were ready for a fight. And they were going to fight. They were ready to attack these guys who were going to do this flag burning demonstration. And guess what happened? Nobody showed to burn the flag. So all these guys were left standing around, armed and ready for a fight, looking like idiots, and nobody came.
Mm,
And the whole thing was just to play, to screw with them. That
mm,
was it. And it worked. It's so simple. So simple. How would you have detected that automatically?
mm.
Very
Right.
difficult.
Right.
Very difficult.
Right. Well,
But very effective.
yeah, so what are the second order effects of this? So this is a demonstration that people can have their buttons pushed and can mobilize against something that turned out to be a hoax, basically, or fake, right? Um, uh, but this presumably can be done with something where two groups are mobilized on the same false set of information, but the groups are not compatible with one another, and it causes a real flashpoint.
Yep. That's another trick you can do.
Mm.
I mean,
And it
there's
it,
no end variations
it
to it.
also has the effect of, just like wasting people's time and energy and all that kind of stuff on, something that winds up being just completely frivolous.
Yeah. Plus, it makes them look stupid. How do you think they're going to
Mm.
feel after looking foolish like that?
Mm.
What will I do? Will I make them even more angry? Or I mean, what will happen?
Hmm. Yeah. Wow.
So, the effects are hard to say, but so these techniques, I mean, they're not that complicated. Or so here's another one I was going to do. I know
Okay.
we don't have too much time, but here's a, this is a variation on a theme from an old. Remember Mission Impossible, the old Mission Impossible show? This is one of my favorites.
Yes.
So, in Mission Impossible, if you wanted to assassinate somebody, the Mission Impossible team, they would get in and convince one of that person's comrades that he had ratted them out or done something to screw them over, so that they would get sufficiently angry and put a bullet in the guy's head.
Mm.
Without them having to actually pull the trigger, it was just convincing his friends that he did something which he didn't do, but that made them so angry that they killed the guy. But you see, when they did it on Mission Impossible, they had to actually infiltrate the organization, right? And they had to get to the guy's comrades, and it was a really messy, tricky kind of a business. So the point is today you could do that sitting at home in your pajamas. You don't have to go anywhere, you don't have to do anything because all you have to do is you find your target, the one you want assassinated, you do a nice profile of the target, and then you go out and you find a small group of sort of violent psychopathic individuals on social media, which is not so hard to do. And what you do is then you start a rumor that this guy, your target, has decided or said something or was going to do something that would really push these guys over the top. And they would get so angry that they would then conveniently go over and put a bullet in the guy's head or blow him up or do something,
Mm.
right?
Hmm.
So then you
Hmm.
have assassination by social media. Simple.
Wow.
Another nice example. And you don't even have to get out of bed. Just do it at home.
Yep.
Yep.
Mm.
So nice trick.
Right.
So those are just kind of, I mean, I could go on and on for a long
Right.
time.
Right. There's
We don't have
there's
time.
there's
Uh,
400 of them. Yeah.
yes. I mean, but I just wanted to give you another couple of examples
Sure.
of, like from conspiracy theories. So there's another lecture on conspiracy theories. How do what makes a good conspiracy theory? How do you construct a conspiracy theory? What are the features of a good conspiracy theory? And, here's one of the tips, for example. It says, don't overdo it. Your target audience will eagerly fill in any holes in your theory. Give your audience a chance to own the theory. Allow them to take ownership by using their imagination and adding their own thoughts, words, and beliefs. Build in a few gaping holes right into the story from the very start and let your audience brainwash themselves. Use statements like, everybody knows that, or it's obvious to any intelligent person that, or nobody disagrees with, when so-called proving your theory. So you convince people, well, it must be true since everybody else apparently believes it. And most people will accept such arguments at face value, believe it or not, especially if they're inclined and you have the right kind of audience and you made the right kind of story. So you want to make your target audience feel that if they don't accept your story, they belong to an intellectual minority or they're just plain stupid.
Mm.
So that's an example of one tip on one slide.
I see.
Um,
Well, so back up to the top of this, Rand. You said that this your original intention is this for individuals to be able to you take care of themselves better. So what are some of just the top level things that you suggest to the common everyday citizen of, for how to be better prepared for the world that we live in today and the world that is coming.
Well, so I mean, listen to the. I mean, think about the thing that I just said, right?
Yeah.
You should be, if you understand how this works, the idea is for you to be able to identify these things happening. So, for example, when it says the instruction is, allow them to take ownership by adding their own thoughts, leave some gaping holes in it. So if somebody's telling you something, there are big holes in it, then you hear everybody talking about how to fill in the holes with that, and none of it's based on anything concrete. Well, that should be a signal that there's something funny. There's something funny about this. Okay, that's how you
Yeah.
should be tipped off. That well, something doesn't sound right. And in fact, if you look, another slide I have here, I brought out. Um, this is another piece of advice, and from this you'll see what I'm talking about. It says, always keep in mind that success of your theory completely depends on the lack of your target audience's critical thinking skills,
Mm,
or at least on their lack of motivation to apply such skills. So you should always avoid logical proofs and explanations based on rules of proper logic. Emotion-driven proofs are most effective more often with most people. If you are careful in your construction, your target audience will want to accept your theory. Important, they want to believe you. Your job is to give them permission to believe, and then find yourself amazed at how many people will sincerely will believe you.
mm,
Okay, so given that this is your going in assumption, right? So it tells you that people shouldn't. You should be able to detect whether an argument, if there's no foundation to it, there's no logic, there's nothing. It's just an emotional appeal. If somebody's telling you something which is just an emotional appeal, you should be extremely suspicious of what it is they're saying. And
mm,
definitely not take it. So if a politician gets up and makes a speech with no actual content other than emotional appeals, I mean, forget that guy. I wouldn't believe anything that guy says.
hmm.
Okay. So that's an example of how you use these things.
Right. And
Simple
and so
example.
and so like good information hygiene these days, it seems to me, would be at a minimum, get your information from a variety of sources, and especially if the kind of thing that you were just describing seems to be present, right? Emotional only arguments is like, well, double check a few different sources to see if there's if what the person is saying holds up.
Yeah, I mean that's a big tip off. If it's purely based on emotions, then I wouldn't believe any of it offhand.
Hmm. Hmm.
Then before you buy into anything, then I would do some investigation. And if you're not willing to do the investigation, then you should just leave it alone.
Right. Right.
Just don't buy anything. Just forget about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just in another minute, I was
Sure.
so one of the things that the lecture on conspiracy theories has, it actually has a belief scale, and there's a test that you could apply to people to see how likely they are to believe in the conspiracy theories, and it's broken into a number of categories. So the categories are, it has 5 dimensions along which you can measure somebody's, we'll call it gullibility for a better word. 5 dimensions. So you have government malfeasance, you have malevolent global experiences, you have control of information, you have extraterrestrial cover-ups, and you have personal well-being. So those are 5 general dimensions. And just to give you an example of some of the questions that go into this questionnaire, for the first one, the question of government malfeasance. So the first question is, and you're supposed to rate how strongly you believe these things on a scale of 1 to 5. So the first question is, the government is involved in the murder of innocent citizens and or well-known public figures and keeps this a secret. That's the first question. Next question. The government permits or perpetrates acts of terrorism on its own soil, disguising its involvement. And the third question, the government uses people as patsies to hide its involvement in criminal activity. So you're supposed to answer these questions, give how strongly you believe each of these statements, how much strongly you buy into them. And then you calculate a score for each dimension, and then you calculate an overall score. So it's kind of a fun test you can do, and you can have this fun with this and do it on your friends.
All right.
People who
All
are
right.
not your friends.
Yeah.
But
Well, I've been a follower of your series for a long time, Rand, and the engaging, somewhat playful way that you present this this content, I think, is really helpful for uh, people to consume it in a way that uh, makes it not makes it not into a chore, but your consistent drip feed of this content, I think, is definitely making a difference. And the community, the society, I think, should be very, very grateful for you pushing this content out and having a positive effect on everything that we're doing. And so, with that, Dr. Rand Waltzman, thank you so much for being a guest again on the Cognitive Crucible. And I guess we'll see you in about maybe 92 episodes or so.
Okay. And if anybody's interested in seeing these slides, they just follow me on LinkedIn. You don't have to, just start monitoring my feed. I post
That,
one every day.
that's exactly right. There you go.
And
Couldn't be
pretty,
easier. Yeah.
nope, no,
Okay.
not at all. All
All
right.
right.
Well, I
Thank you,
wish
Rand.
everybody good luck.
Thanks, Rand.
Take care.
The Cognitive Crucible is the only podcast dedicated to increasing interdisciplinary collaboration between information operations practitioners, scholars, and policymakers. To find out more about the Information Professionals Association, visit us at information-professionals.org. Please support our podcast by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review.